Hello everyone, average 40k a year. Today's episode is a continuation of our last episode, What is Competitive 40k? We try to engage with some responders and with the community that replied to our story. We're gonna look into details how to start competing and what it feels like to start competing in a world that it could be hard. Pau is going to introduce our guest, our first commenter, or the first person that decided to interact and take the step and take the leap to interact with our podcast. And we are very honored to have you here. But Pau, who is this person? Who is this guest?
Yes, thank you very much, Federico, and I greet you all. Oh, what a big surprise we have! It's the man himself, the big potato mage, and he's Martin, a dear friend of ours. And what could we say about Martin? He's a husband, he's a father, a hobbyist, and he likes to call himself a big lover for board games. He is one of the most active and motivated members of the freshly formed tabletop gaming club Berlin. I apologize, and the first person who ever interacted with our content. So yay! Also, he has a jolly good, great YouTube channel, which we will link in the description down below. Check it out. He's a great chap. But Martin, who better to introduce and talk about you than yourself?
Oh, thank you very much. So, first off, hello everyone. My name is Martin. I am the Great Potato Mage. And what really can I say? I've been involved in the hobby side of Games Workshop, collecting Warhammer 40k, things like that, for it hurts to admit around about 22 years, which I think might actually be a little bit older than POW. It's one of those things. I'm sure a lot of us have been in for a while. I actually come and talk on this podcast mainly because I haven't played that many games of 40k in all of that time. I've only played a very, very small handful of games. So while I can't really go in depth on the actual competitive side of things, hopefully I can give an interesting outlook, an interesting sort of look at the position that I'm in coming into this.
Perfect. And so maybe since you're here to refocus the attention of our listeners, could you summarize the comment you left us on YouTube, just to center and focus the conversation?
Now you're asking because it was a while ago. It's okay. Don't worry. So, in summary, in a very, very short summary, because it was a very, very, very long comment, as anyone who's even attempted to read it can tell you. You were saying, you got to the bottom of it and clicked the read more, and then you scrolled through and got another read more that you had to click. So, it was quite an involved, in depth comment, mostly around. I think you both touched on this point of uh, there weren't as many people joining competitive, or there was this sort of feeling that you got when you introduced yourself to people as a competitive player, that people sort of took a step back. And when you were looking for games, a lot of people were really wary about coming forward and joining you in games because you were, sort of quote unquote competitive players. And you had a couple of ideas about why that had come across and what was going on. You had some wonderful discussion about the actual goal of becoming a competitive player, about the playing at a higher level, playing a much tighter game, all that sort of stuff. I just kind of tried weighing in a little bit on why I thought that people struggled with engaging with quote unquote competitive players as a generalization.
Yeah, because I think your experience, not just yours, to be honest, even when I started, because I started just when I moved to Berlin, and the first few people I met, some of them were nice. The store owner was nice, but some of the players tried to almost take advantage of my being new to score some easy points or something, like easy victories, and that always felt weird at first. But for me, instead of being an off-putting thing, was more of an incentive to, okay, next time I'm gonna come and just I'm gonna beat you. I didn't have much money, so all my models came from eBay. So my unit selection was very restricted to what I could afford to start with. So I couldn't just come up with a super uber net list and be like, haha, I just gonna beat you because my list is stronger. I had to play what I had. And actually, over the course of probably 3 months, I want to say, three long winter months in Berlin. So actually feels like 8 or something. I managed to overcome and start beating those people, but it was because each loss was a lesson. It was not. I was never ashamed of losing or something like that, and I didn't have a problem with losing because for me it was like I'm not playing this game. I'm playing the next 100, like I said in the other episode, because I wanted to a competitive venue to play. I already had a competitive mindset going in day one. If you don't, I feel like it would be terrible. Like having people fielding this weird stuff, weird rules, and like you don't even know what's going on. That's just a terrible experience for anyone involved. But there are some people in this hobby that are like on a kind of a power trip. It's a strong word, but I don't know how to else describe it. I don't know if you want to have a similar experience or want to.
Uh, yeah, so with regards to that, that's a very, very sort of common experience that like me personally, I've had, and also people that I know have had, where it seems like a thing that happens is you, as a new player, or as someone who has no experience actually playing the game, you come along to a local game store and you see if anyone is available for a game and wants to play. And there's always one person who says, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go. Let's play. And you get to the table, you put out your army, and it's like you're a brand new player. Um, you have maybe a start collecting box, maybe two start collecting boxes, maybe a Dark Imperium, something like that. You've painted all the things, you've put your heart and soul into it, you lay everything out, and the person across from you puts down a single vehicle that you've never seen before. And you say, "What's this?" "Oh, this is, I don't know, a Storm Raven gunship." "Oh, okay, cool. What's that do?" "Well, it flies and it's a transport, so it's got like units inside." "Oh, that's kind of cool." And we'll roll off for turn one. "All right, okay, you get to go first, newbie." "Ah, brilliant." So you reposition your units where you think they're gonna have some effect. You'd maybe take some pot shots with your long range weapons. Nothing really happens. Goes to the other opponent's turn one, and they zip their Stormraven gunship up the field about 7 inches away from your units, drop out 2 units of Grey Knight strike squads, shoot and destroy half of the units, and then charge with the rest of them and wipe you out on turn one. And all they seem to be interested in is winning. And yeah, they're really friendly about it, and they'll talk you through all of the interactions and all the different magical items and this, that, and the other, every single piece of equipment that their army's got, and they'll talk stat lines for hours. But that doesn't help. You still have a really bad taste in your mouth that someone has just vomited knowledge at you that you hadn't ever heard of, hadn't ever seen these units before. You think that it's a failing of your own, and that just leaves people not wanting to play again.
I totally understand the feeling. I feel like if someone would pull that thing on me on my first in one of my first 10 games, I would be like, no, like, okay,
Mm.
like you won, you're never gonna play with me ever again.
Well, I have to agree with Martin because that kind of people, the person who knows several game system and is always like sitting there and he's really cool when you talk to him. And the term of vomiting knowledge, this is something that I can really understand that is really upsetting in any scenario in life. So yeah, when I started playing 40k for real in a competitive way, I had some games when it was really just people beating me with their codex in hand, like it was like a slapstick or something, like a hammer of knowledge into my head, and that felt good. Didn't feel good at all.
I totally agree with you. I agree with both of you, but that's why I made a point that I wanted to talk about today was in some games, I think what sometimes is missing is a clear set of expectation and communication. Because if
Mm.
someone is new and, and talks to me that I'm new and want to play, I wouldn't pick up random stuff from my box. It's like, okay, I'm gonna play three other planes. You cannot do anything about them. You don't have the right list, and I'm gonna just kill you, and you cannot do anything. Like, I'm not gonna feel good. You're not gonna feel good. You're not. We're none of us is gonna learn anything new. But that's, I think, is a matter of managing expectation and communication, and whenever a clear communication of what you want from this game. Because even when I play a more competitive game, I can have different expectations, and I don't mind. Like, if I'm gonna lose, but I want to learn as much as possible. But I feel, I before it end, I tell him, from this game I want to learn. I want to get better. And sometimes it's a problem when you have random people meeting and organizing games. It's like they're not clear about their expectation. Also, another problem could be that their definition of what's competitive, what's strong, what's weak, what's fluffy, what's narrative is different, right? But there's no way to do it except to just meet up and do it once. And just to tie up this point before asking your opinion about managing expectation and communication and what you want from that particular game, is that to remember something like not everyone is good at teaching. Not everyone is a teacher. So maybe some people, maybe they're there trying their hardest to, and they think, oh, with my Storm Raven full of grenades, I'm gonna destroy you. So you're gonna learn to respect that, or you're gonna learn those moves. But in their, because in their head maybe it's clear, but maybe they're just terrible teachers on both people to manage that expectation and the relationship. I feel like. Do I make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are quite a few points there that I really want to get into. One, you're absolutely right. Communication is key in so many things because people inherently, like, we don't understand each other just by, looking someone in the eyes. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes it happens, but it's not often. We need words. That's why language is a beautiful thing. Communication, absolutely. Like, I'm a massive fan of Session Zero, for example. Session Zero in Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, role playing games, where everyone sets their expectation and everyone says, look, I don't want to talk about like this thing. Session Zero in Warhammer games, Magic the Gathering games, like especially Commander, which is meant to be a multiplayer fun format. Absolutely. Massive fan of those. The problem with that comes in where it feels a little bit bad to say, but there is a bit of a stereotype about people who play Warhammer not being great communicators. And I know it's not every single person, but it's enough where it can be sort of an inherent problem, I think. For my part, I always sort of say, look, I've never played before, or I've been collecting for this amount of time, but I've never played, or I've only played a handful of games. Because I have only played a handful of games, and it lets people know that, yes, I'm open to learn, and I'm looking for a play experience, but I have enough depth of knowledge where you don't necessarily have to be like, this is called a las cannon. It's definitely one of these things where, yeah, managing expectations, talking with each other, it would solve so many problems, but it can also be very, very hard actually like getting that communication across.
And the point I want to stress out about this piece of the episode is that, as you said, communication is crucial. Expectations, managing expectations for both people is crucial. But also something is that you kind of need to be the person you want to see in the hobby. Like, you need to change the hobby by example, because sometimes people just need, and it feels silly because we are playing toy soldiers, right? And this applies to everything. But it's like, as if you see people that start behaving in a way that you like, you're more likely to follow them. And if they stand out and call out when people say bad things, when people are way too controversial for a grammar group, when people have this attitude of winning at all cost, and these all things that ruin the experience, not for just this game, but for the community as a whole, that you need to, not you, but one person needs to step up, right? You need to be the change. That's why we also want to have these episodes, and I think they're going to be focused on the introduction to compiling 40k, because we want to put forward a different kind of Warhammer 40k, and what Warhammer 40k for us should be: a more friendly, a more agreeable, and safe. Just again, strong word, but as a safe environment which you just show up and play.
Yes, I just wanted to just give a nice example of how beautiful and how colorful 40k competitive can be. I want just remember you, Federico, the first game we played at the Prague Open last year. Played against the Swedish team, and the first thing they gave us was a little bottle of vodka, and they were all really, really funny guys, and we had a great time. Despite it was like a highly competitive game, it was in a tournament playing for some good points. But yeah, we all had fun, and this little gift of just a vodka bottle, I just found it really funny.
Yeah, and I think it inspired me. And if we have a term tournament, I 100% will push to bring a gift for our first opponent,
Yes, maybe just a little die.
just to set the tone. Just to set the tone. Yeah, yeah, or something. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna sort of bounce off of that point. You know, people. This is one of the things about hobbies the world over is there are going to be people that are absolutely fantastic, and there are going to be people that are absolutely terrible. It seems like with that example, you've had a wonderful experience, but that experience, for better or for worse, isn't necessarily everyone's experience. And I understand sort of like tempering your expectations, and not every single person is going to be nice, and not every single person is going to be like super friendly, that sort of thing. But there's, you know what, it's okay. I think I've got a point. I just need to think about it a little bit more and
Yeah,
sound it out in my
no
head.
worries.
We were talking about the lovely Swedish team with the vodka bottle.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, even if they were the exception, what we were trying to do here is to make that the rule, not the exception. Like having a more
Yeah,
humane way to play the game. Like we should all, before we are competing with toy soldiers, we're actually humans that meet each other and want to treat each other with respect, in a way, with humanity. Like not even be nice, but just don't be dicks. That's the bare minimum. And we would solve so many problems if everyone would adhere to this simple rule: don't be a dick. Again, we want to show that there is a different way to do competitive 40k, and this is our way, and I think is the only way I would want to play.
And if you can go on talking, which are some important not steps, but maybe fundamental things you should do or should consider if you want to get starting and playing competitive 40k. And I can talk from my experience, is just having a solid human base around you, like friends, hobby enthusiasts like yourself, that can give you a little bit of backhold. Because the first game that I played, I was in a competitive international GT. I was 16, and it was not so cool losing 3 games in a row. I was nearly crying, and it was so just good to have, because I played not so fun people as well, Martin. I can guarantee you that. Yeah, some giant Spanish beer pushed me aside, and I was nearly crying, but that doesn't matter. But just having my other 5 teammates there and saying, "No, don't worry about just a stupid guy with told soldiers, and we're all just messing around. Don't worry, you will get this guy next year." It just helped, and I think because you can face, especially in the competitive scene, so many bad experience. That's always good to have this reassurance that you can come home to some people that will make you feel like home playing this game. And this can be like in narrative, but as well in competitive. Like with Federico, I always feel like coming home playing against him because it's always kind.
yeah.
Yeah, but on your personal experience, like yes, you're gonna get those people next time, but also times are changing, and we should be able to just stand up and say that behavior is wrong, not because you're bullying a 16-year-old. Like, what are you even doing? Like, but that's the thing, right? We see change because one of my favorite quotes, but I don't know where it's from, and I don't know it by heart. But it's like the quote going along the lines of that evil can just flourish when good men do nothing, or something like that. And that's exactly what we are trying to do in our little garden, because we are not going to change the world. We're talking about competitive Warhammer 40,000, but even in our little, we can just change things. And I think we should never like stop trying, in a way that we are in a moment when we can call out people, and we know that some people are gonna because and be like, that behavior is wrong. And that's what needs to happen in order to have change, like facing reality and facing confrontation of respectful terms. Because we had some episodes in the past, even in the community, of people being a lot out of line and being called out. And you see this snowball effect that as soon as the first person stands up, other good people stand up, because the other step is always the first one. Then you have people backing you, so it's like easier. But that's the result of a safer environment, and I think is a different environment also today than it was probably 10 years ago. So I think it's something I really want to stress about this podcast and about like what we stand for inside of 40k. Leaving morality aside for a little while, I think, as you said, Pau, what someone need to do to learn and to get into competitive 40k, and just once we get to the point in which you meet decent human people and you interact with decent human being, and everyone is making an effort to communicate, manage their expectation, have as fun and friendly experience possible. We also have to remember something, that this game is so complex and it's challenging and it's hard to learn and to master. Like the ceiling, the floor is super high and the ceiling is even higher. You cannot expect to show up, play 3 games, and just understand the game, because simply there are a million rules, a million exceptions to your rules, and these million rules interact with each other in an exponential way, and so you can easily get lost. So you know that if you want to be a competitive player, but that goes for any kind of hobby or activity, it's just that this one has so many rules that you have to learn, is also managing your own expectation. Like, it's okay to lose, there is no shame in losing, you're no less of a person if you lose. And I feel like sometimes that's also missing in this community. Like, you feel like, oh, I lost, then I'm terrible, I lost, then is the worst thing in my life. No, the first step to enter competitive 40k, in my opinion, is to understand that each loss is a lesson. There is no shame in defeat, basically. And that's a very important message that I want to stress, because it needs to come across. Is the first step. If you truly want to compete in this game, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna suck a lot, and then it's gonna get better. It's gonna get worse before it's gonna get better.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say to that is how to start this. So it kind of goes back to how we started out talking about this, I think. Like, generally, I came into 40k many, many years ago. The times that I have tried playing, even like my first couple of games, like my first 2-3 games, like 3rd edition, got beat handily. 4th edition got beat handily. 5th edition got beat handily, but played with my flatmate for a handful of games. 8th edition 40k was trying to get a Horus Heresy force put together, because a whole bunch of people that I knew that painted but didn't play had all agreed to get into Horus Heresy. So moved on to 9th edition, and then the world exploded. Each and every single one of those games I've gone into with the expectation that I'm going to lose, but it is going to be a learning experience. And unfortunately, the only thing that I learned from all of those different experiences with different people across different years, across different decades in some cases, is there is a reputation that quote unquote competitive players have earned, and it doesn't change much. Now, that's entirely my experience of it. Your mileage may vary, but even me going in saying, right, I'm gonna lose. Every single board game, I always go in saying, right, I'm gonna lose the first one. I know I'm going to lose the first one because I've never played it before, and I'm playing someone who plays it every single week. It's fine having that expectation, but sometimes even then, it's not the loss that affects you and stops you from wanting to continue. It's not even the behavior. Like I was saying at the very, very beginning, like, the opponent could be the nicest person that you've ever spoken to, ever, and are really, really helpful. But it's the overall experience of it. I don't necessarily want my opponent to, stand across from me and say, "Oh no, that was terrible." Like, I'm so sorry that my army did what it was meant to do. It's coming into it and having that negative experience, and having that negative experience compounded again and again and again and again and again. That's what turns people off from even just playing 40k as a beer and pretzels game. I understand that we're focused on playing competitively on this podcast. I understand that that's like what we want to do. We want to get people playing competitively and have more opponents and have a great time and learn to play at higher levels. But in order to do that, you kind of need the people to already want to play at the lower levels. And that issue that comes across where people don't want to play at the lower levels, that I think causes a lot more problems further down the line.
Yeah, but then I would ask you, those kind of people that do that, do you think they're an higher level or they're the lowest of the higher level that they're so done with losing that they need some easy wins? Because that's not a behavior. Like if you're playing an high level, it's like let's pretend we play chess.
Mhm.
Let's say I'm 2,200 and I play against someone that is 900. Like there is zero satisfaction for me in winning, and I can probably bet that of all those people that are at an higher level, they don't get satisfaction by winning. It's always those people in the middle. There's people that are stuck in a video game. If you play video games and you get the references, like people that are stuck in a league, they think they're better than they are, but they are not. So in order to win, they create a new account and they go beating people that just started the game because like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so good, look what I can do. I feel like it's more that kind of people could create problems because the people I have fun playing with, they're competitively minded. We are always on the lookout for each other most of the time, being like, hey, you know what, if you do that, be aware that I can do that. Like, because that's the thing, right? We are there to learn together, we are there to get better together. And I had a few games in which I taught people how to play the game. And it was also, I give you the total freedom of doing whatever you feel is right. I'm not going to tell you how to play, like as long as you know the rules, of course. And then I'll tell you, what do you think is going to happen if you do that? Like, what's the reasoning behind that move? And what do you think I'm going to do? Like, do you know that if you do that, you open yourself up to something? Because there is no learning if me being like, oh, you left a 2 millimeters gap in your forces. It means that this thing can go off and that thing can go off, and then you lose the game. Okay. Like, why would I do that? Like, if my opponent can fix it by just simply moving something back, like, half an inch, or if someone like pre-measures something is like, oh, I'm off half an inch, and you realize in the command phase or something or at random phase, like, yes, sure, move it half an inch. If you're in range now of the thing you need to be in range, like, it's not a big deal. And that's, I feel like, is a difference between a competitive player and someone that plays to win. But you get what I mean? Like, if I play with someone, I always want to have the best possible game.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense, that outlook. And yeah, like, see, this is the thing. You have a good support group with that. That's absolutely fine. But you've gotten that support group through playing and making friends and being in the hobby. I'm coming at it from a point of you can't get that many new people in the hobby because there's this roadblock, not necessarily of people trying to edge out a win just because they're stuck at a certain point and they can't get wins in a sort of speech bubble legitimate way, but they sort of, back to your point about not everyone can be a teacher. Yeah, absolutely, not everyone can be a teacher, but enough people have had enough of a learning experience where they can sort of run through something. They might not be the greatest teacher, they might not be able to like do it, but everyone can sort of give at least a rough sort of, okay, this is how this works, this is how that works. My experience, for example, has always been, I don't know how to play, I want someone to teach me basic rules. Yeah, I can do that. And then I get tabled by a really nice person who is a pillar of the local community, but they do it in such a way that I never want to play that person again. And even when I push myself to play with that person again, multiple other times where they, for example, use a different army list, something like I run a different army list. I 3 versus 3 game where I have one flank and I'm up against someone that I've never played against before, like directly across from me, but also affect the outcomes of 2 other games on the same giant table. Like, all of these things have the same sort of outcome and have the same things happen, which is, even that, where it's like, base level, I don't know what I'm doing, just tell me what I'm doing. They'll tell you what you're doing, but it still has this effect. and it still comes across as they are, they're showboating without actually showboating, because we tend to build lists for very specific things, and sometimes you lose focus on what a beginner list can be, or like what the beginner experience is, because you've had so many. I think that's explaining it right. Like, people lose track of what it's like to be at the bottom and can't relate anymore, and then causes issues later on, I think.
I think I get what you're trying to say, but I also disagree with you. Meaning
Hmm.
that if someone asks, "Can you teach me how to play?" and still I'm gonna play against you with all the like at 100%, like using all my moves that are perfectly legal, okay, but maybe they're unusual, but you still can do it legally, so you don't feel bad about it. That's not teaching anyone anything. Like, that's just wanting to win, and you're trying to mask it by being like, "I want to teach you." Because, for example, a game I had the other day, I used a trick basically. So I charged some melee units, and they were next to a vehicle. So the rules say when you pile in or consolidate, you need to end up closer to the closest model. So I piled in a way that made so that the vehicle now was the closest by like fifth of an inch than the melee squad. So I attacked the melee squad, okay, and it's my turn to consolidate. Now the vehicle is the closest one. It's not the melee squad anymore because with my piling move that was legal. So now I pile in, I consolidate 3 inches away from the melee squad, but touching the vehicle. So I end up closer to the vehicle.
Hmm.
So that means that I get to strike at a melee squad and then I get away, and you can't do anything about it because I'm more than 1 inch away, so you cannot activate. So basically, I got out 3 damage. Perfect normal move that is legal. Actually, it's a good move that you can see in a competitive scenario. I would never dream of doing that against a person that's starting. Like, I'm not even gonna bother telling them I can do that because that's like
Yeah.
2 steps ahead. Like, but some people instead in a game they would do it, but that's not teaching anyone anything. It's just being like, oh, that's legal. That's what I can do. That's how you learn. No, that's not how you learn, because if you don't understand the basics, you can understand a move that is complex. And it's just,
Mhm.
you're not teaching anyone. You're just playing the game, being like, I can play you, but I'm playing like as I would play anyone else. And that's where the issue for me is. Like, you're saying, I can teach you, I tell you what I'm doing, but you're not playing a beginner game. And teaching is playing a beginner game.
Yeah.
It's not like giving the odds against me to lose and
Yeah.
still win because I know the game better. That's the
Yeah.
problem, I think. And also, just to build on that, since it's one of the points we had on the podcast, Pau and I were thinking about offering, it's not a service, but it's an opportunity. Basically, we can tell if someone is interested, they can text us or just leave a comment down below or something. And they can write a list they think is good, even with their own model, and we're gonna have a game, and then they're gonna send us another list. So basically, all of them they design 2 lists, and then on the list they are gonna play, we try to optimize it. But it doesn't mean you send me a battlescribe file and I edit it and I say blah blah blah. This is better. Dot. It's like, why do you make those choices? Like, it's a more learning possibility. Like, you build a list, okay? I know maybe I can guess what you have in your head, like while they were writing it, but it would be like, okay, why do you do that? Because sometimes, it's, as silly as it sounds, is when you say things aloud, they make less sense. And it's just an idea of getting it into competitive 40k by having still an even matchup, but it's beginner friendly and everything, and having the chance to balance off the lists in a way. So to have a chance to get your list revisited, to get a friendly game in, and just to get some action in these COVID times, if you're fine with it. No pressure, of course. But that's the thing. Like, anyone, feel free to leave a comment down below, and we can set something up like this. Even if you want a list review or something more simple, anyone that is listening and wants some feedback or anything, just feel free. I'm not here with the attitude of being like, I'm gonna teach you how to play, because that's not even what I want to do. But I'm saying, if you're interested in competitive 40k, you want to be part of having a feel of what it feels like. If you want to maybe start to build your support group, because that's what you said earlier, and I think it should be addressed. Like, it's hard to start playing if you play against, you have bad experience. We are opening this up, meaning if you want to play with us, like, feel free. We would love, like, don't be afraid.
No, I just wanted to explain the method we came up, Martin. Last time we talked about maybe creating like a more fairer approach, which could maybe teach the both of us a little bit. That the so-called weaker player, which is not a term we would use,
Yeah.
creates the list for me. For instance, if you, Martin, will play against me, you create a list for me with the models I have. So you are forced to read the rules. You are forced to know what I bring, and so your expectation of what an army should be is kind of achieved. So no spam, probably no spam. Not weird units, no weird Forge World shenanigans which I could pull, and then and it will be fun probably. And then I review your list. I see what little combos you could make, what does work, what doesn't work so well, and from that base which you create, we could maybe create and optimize for some future better place. Sorry, it was just like I'm just wanted to put this option in the room. That is also another method to open up
Yeah.
to other players.
So around about that sort of time, just as the first lockdown was about to hit, everyone had sort of been discussing for a little while. We've got a whole bunch of new players. We've got a bunch of people that have moved to Berlin, never played, or are looking for their first games with people here. Let's set something up. There's a whole bunch of people who want to get into Age of Sigmar. Let's do a Path to Glory. And then lockdown one hit, and what ended up happening was a whole bunch of people, myself included, said, right, okay, we've chosen our armies. Let's paint our things, come up with our starting lists, and then we'll play. And we did, and a whole bunch of us found our first opponents and played a couple of games just to learn the very, very basic rules and had interesting experiences. And then in the short period of time before lockdown 2, we got a bunch of games in and had a bunch of fun. That was a real benefit, I think, for people, especially like me, who've had a bit negative experiences before, because even going in kind of half expecting a negative experience and having a little bit of a negative experience, I will say, in my first couple of games, going from that into, game number 3, game number 4, game number 5, while the option was there, now knows roughly how to do things. And having that regular sort of game against someone of my own similar sort of level, and also being able to talk with dozens of people that have all found themselves in the same boat, like all these wonderful people coming together in this one sort of forum where we could all talk about it and cast ideas off of each other, things like that. That was an absolute wonderful gift that has helped so much, in all honesty. Now we have that very similar sort of thing, thankfully with you guys, and again with the Discord and the various different groups that I'm in. I can talk with people about 40k and that sort of thing. It's an interesting sort of concept where you have someone say, right, okay, like, we know that you've not played before, but we want to get you into it. That's cool. Right, okay, that was point one. Point number two, which is, sort of the response to the offer of army lists and things like that. It's an interesting one that I actually feel two different ways about. It's definitely a thing that I would be interested in doing. It's something that I do want to play you guys. I definitely want to play you, and I definitely want to learn how to play at a competitive level. I really want to experience this game that I've loved the background of and loved the models of for all of this time. And I definitely want to play against you and commiserate with you and learn with you and everything. And that's the positive side of it. I really want to do that but at the same time, there's this little niggling sort of thought in the back of my head that says, I can definitely come up with a list for myself, but coming up with a list for you as well feels like I'm being made to do the work. If the only models that I have is a Dark Imperium box and a Combat Patrol, that's all that I can work with. Like, yeah, there's some magical items or, like relics and things like that we can put in there, but
The answer to your first point, then, the putting all the labor on the learning player is easily fixable in a way that then Pau and I can come up with template of list for each faction. And so let's say I have Marine and Eldars, Pau has a bunch of armies, and we can create a standard template of, okay, to learn, we're gonna play this army. Like, it's not good. It's like, it makes sense in a way. It's not optimized. It's not broken or anything.
Yeah, so
So everyone is as a template more than an army, basically, an average out of the faction. And on the other end, for fixing the problem, like for example, if you play Space Marines or if you play a faction that I have of course zero problems like landing new models to test them out, or even proxying stuff. Like let's all pretend that that tactical marine, if you put a marking or something, is a chaplain. I have zero issues. Like you can play whatever you want. I'm not gonna force you to spend 25 euros on a model because I want to see it, because we're here to learn. And so it's like I can't care less. Like as long as you're okay with it and you're the one playing it, and as long as it's clear what it is, then I'm 100% okay. But that's a good feedback on the for sure the list. We can probably come up. I'm gonna talk to Paul. So what do you think? We could come up with templates or something. Maybe it's easier.
The idea with the templates is actually what I was thinking when I was asking you make my list and I improve yours, because competitive is not like a yeah, you play competitive from one day, because we don't want to get to the point you buying entire army of eBay from one day to another. It should be more of a gradual thing. So you have your base, you have your models that you have, and then for the next game, maybe this game can be in 2 weeks, maybe in 2 months. Maybe you want to buy more models, maybe you want to convert some models, ideas to improve your army. And this will be just ideas. And I completely get the point that having to care about a second army can be tedious and it puts a lot of work. But I really believe that should be the first step for someone who wants to get into competitive, that he knows what he's playing against. Because it makes the game go much faster. It sets your expectations. It's very important that we talk about expectation in this episode, because it's the most important part, I believe, and it will improve your feeling of playing the army against. So if you play against Deathguard and you want, okay, I want to play Mortarion against Mortarion, for instance, then you look up the rules for this big bad boy, and then you won't be surprised that, oh, he reduces my resistance by 1 in 9 inches, or he has like a big ass sword. Well, it's not a sword, it's a scythe that does damage to 3+3. Small things, and always oriented in a much broader time term.
Yes, and I think that could be a very good way to have a game too, because we always stress preparation. If you want to have a fun game, if you want to have a competitive game, you have to know what you're up against and what you do. Like if you know what you can do and you know what your opponent can do, then everybody's gonna have a better game because they're not gonna feel bad. You know what to expect, you know what to expect. And it's a big part of winning a game is knowing what your opponent can do, but not just in 40k. And so it's such a tool that you need to master, like preparing for a game if you want to be competitive. If you want to play Settlers of Catan, you need to understand how to build a settlement, how to build a city, what's strong where and when. And you all have to understand like more than just the game itself in order to have a competitive experience. So maybe you're right. Like, and a good compromise could be we can offer templates of lists. Like, I want to play against that guard. Okay, I'm gonna play this standard list, but the next game, you need to learn some other things. Like, I don't know, like preparation or something, like start knowing the stratagems, knowing all the tricks. Everybody knows what they are if they just bother to look them up. And it's a lot of labor, and it's hard, and it's terrible, and it's scary, yes. And it sounds like so tiresome, like you just want to play, but that's what's needed to have a better game in the end. Because I know, for example, the first time I played against Paus Harlequins, he did the same thing. It's like, oh, turn 1, everything is dead. Game 2, what I did, I pre-measured from his boats. Like, okay, you can move up to here. I'm gonna just sit half an inch back, so you're not gonna pull the same trick on me again. And then he found out a new way to kill me. But the third game, those 2 tricks were not available anymore to him, so he had to come up with more tricks every time.
No, I don't. I do not come up with tricks because, as Grandmaster Ben Feingold says, tricks are for kids, and I'm not a kid anymore.
They are not tricks; they are different strategies. But yes, that's the kind of thing, right? It's more than just to the game, but also if you want to have a game with us about an introduction to Compile 40k, if you want to game a game with us randomly, then that's okay.
Yeah, I do think something like almost like a primer. Yes, your troops, your intercessors are important. Your objective secured is important, but the strength of your army actually relies on this unit, this unit, this unit. These things are good. You want these as opposed to just more objective secured stuff. If you're playing with Harlequins, they're very, very speedy. This is the sort of thing that you want to be doing with them, and also the sort of thing that you want to avoid. That sort of like, here's a couple of quick sentences. This is the sort of thing you can expect, but without actually writing a list for you or like, making you try to do something that is, not too much mental work, you see?
That was never the intent, or the intent is just to you play with your models, but
Mm.
then we're gonna come up together because I'm gonna give you
Yeah,
feedback.
no, yeah,
I'm not forcing
absolutely.
to do anything, to just understand why something is good. Being a good competitive 40k is also not a meta follower, but being understanding why the meta is in a way and how to counter that, how to be prepared. And actually, about this topic of primers, I think is a great idea. But Pau, do you want to talk about one of their next projects?
We really want to get a series started, which will cover for each 40k faction, and we will give some ideas on how to start and what are the best buys for starters, what are the main tips and tricks and strategies, of course, and of course the feeling that you get playing them. And there, of course, we will be talking a little bit of lore with the lore master Federico himself. And just to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to the army and how it plays in this ballet house of competitive 40k.
And I think that's gonna be our next big project. And just to make you realize how what competitive 40k means to us. I play Ultramarines. They're terrible in the grand scheme of things. They're not the best by far Marine faction, but I just love them. Okay, I
Hmm.
played I think 5-6 games with Wisecars because I wanted to try them out, and the feeling of playing them is amazing. Not just because they're strong, because they're strong if you use them well, and all the buffs they get, all the interaction they have. I love how the army plays, but at the end of the day, I cannot bring myself to play them because they don't speak to me. They're
Yeah,
not my Ultramarines. Like they're not cool. They're not what I want to be. They're not my heroes in the story. Like they are not mine.
yeah, they're not your dudes.
And I collect and play armies that I love the lore of. Like I love Eldars because I think they're a good guy. And I love Ultramarines because I think they're the good guy in the universe. And all that could be go around that. But just those are the people faces of the hobbies that I like and love and I feel passionate about. And I could never be committed to an army I don't like or don't care about. Like I
Yeah,
cannot pick up a random army just because it's strong. What competitive 40k is, because before competitive there is 40k. Like 40k is way bigger than competitive.
yeah,
And because we
absolutely.
are all in this hobby, because I don't know how they created that. It's just an amazing story, an amazing lore, amazing setting, amazing everything is so cool that it comes before competitive for me.
Mm.
But then competitive needs to be there for me in order to for me
Yeah.
to have more fun. It's more fun for me to play competitive. Like
Mm.
going into a game and being like, this is a 50-50 game is like the thrill is like, oh, I could win. If I play well, I win. If I play badly, I lose. And that's the feeling we're after by playing competitive, by putting competitive into 40k. So any closing statements? Any of you? You want to something to say, something to remarks, just something to make sure?
Yeah, maybe I can start and I would say, first of all, thank you very much, Martin, for being here and talking with us. And it was really informative and helpful. Well, I talked with you a lot of times before, but I think it was really good to have this now on tape for eternity. It was really good to debate with you different options and different approaches we can get to just make this happy family even bigger.
Yeah. If I have to stress one point, I stressed so many points in the podcast, but who cares? I'm the host, so I can do it. The point I want to bring across is we want to expand the community and want to make sure that while the community expands, it expands with solid rules of respect, sportsmanship, and just being decent human beings, and just push away the old mindset of competitive 40k being all those like in a word dicks. And that's
Yeah.
what we want. Why we started podcast. That's why we talk about why we think we care is that we want to expand this community. It's not about rules because that like what we expect in a community because we want the community to work and be a safe place for everyone to come, learn, and like make friends basically because we all share this passion that it tries every day to overtake our life basically.
What could I say in closing? I would like first off, just thanks for having me. Like, it's been fun. I know we've probably sort of gone a little bit over what you were wanting, and I'm sure this is going to get cut down a little bit. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been really sort of educational. It's been nice talking about these sorts of things. I'm definitely looking forward to actually coming along and playing games. And yeah, losing every single game for the first like 6 months or something, and then sort of finding my feet and getting into things. I am looking forward to the things that I would say to anyone who's listening who maybe is in the same sort of boat as me, where you haven't played that many games or you've never played competitive, is to reiterate what you were saying. There's nothing wrong with losing. Losing is as much a learning experience as it is winning. You need to have an expectation that you are going to go into a brand new thing and lose. Not necessarily every single time, but probably the majority for the beginning. And you know what? If the person that you play against the very first time comes across in a negative way or doesn't make you feel like you want to continue, that's fine. Avoid that person. Play with someone else. See if you can find someone the same sort of level as you, or maybe someone like Pau or Federico, who are actually, sort of good teachers and know what they're doing and are open to actually helping. We all want to have fun. We all want to play games and continue having fun. That's why we do this. Like, no one wants to put their army in a box and leave it for.
I think that's a very good closing statement. Thank you for joining us for today's session. And I think this could be it for today. Thank you for the great session. And if someone is still listening, you are my hero.